It's Tuesday, August 4. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. Jamaica has seen a record increase in the number of positive COVID-19 hospitalizations in the last 24 hours. A release from the Health Ministry says total hospitalization, including confirmed and suspected positive cases, stands at 35. This number includes 8 patients who are moderately ill, representing the highest ever counted as moderately ill. 11 new cases of COVID-19 have pushed Jamaica's tally to 905. The 6 females and 5 males range in age from 6 to 76. 9 are from St. Thomas and are contacts of a confirmed case. 1 is from St. Catherine and is also a contact of a confirmed case, while the remaining case is imported from the United States, with that person staying in St. Anne. Recoveries remain at 743. Jamaica's COVID-19 deaths stand at 12. The head of the World Health Organization, WHO, on Monday said while there is hope for a vaccine against COVID-19, one might never be found. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who spoke at a news briefing, implored people around the world to comply with measures such as social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing.
A number of vaccines are now in phase 3 clinical trials, and we all hope to have a number of effective vaccines that can help prevent people from infection. However, there is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be. For now, stopping outbreaks comes down to the basics of public health and disease control: testing, isolating, and treating patients, and tracing and quarantining their contacts. Do it all.
Globally, more than 18 million COVID-19 infections have been recorded, with the death toll at 689,000. The National Water Commission's COVID Assistance Program has been extended until August 31, 2020 for selected categories of customers. Customers who have outstanding balances as at May 31, 2020 are now eligible to take advantage of the extension. These customers will continue to benefit from the 30% discount on their outstanding balances if they decide to settle their debt. This initiative is for customers in the residential and condominium categories. Another set of customers will also benefit from a new discount arrangement. Commercial customers can now benefit from a 25% discount on balances as at May 31, 2020. Over the last 25 years in Jamaica, crime has occupied a central place in media articles as well as public and political debate. This has led over time to crime-oriented legislation and more recently zones of special operations and states of emergencies across the island. Crime, justice and policing are issues that affect a wide range of stakeholders and places significant demands on government and the public sector. A collective approach is being taken by all stakeholders to reduce and eventually eliminate crime from the island. Marlon Samuels has more in this report.
Collective efficacy is the shared belief that a group can use its collective resources to organize and execute the courses of action required to produce given results. In this case, a reduction in crime. On Monday, August 3, 2020, civil society groups, academia, private sector groups, trade unions, the church, and leaders of both political parties attended the National Consensus Summit on Crime in downtown Kingston.
Public disorder, crime and violence, and limited consequences for breaches of the law have for too long characterized Jamaica's security landscape. The political, economic, social, cultural, and infrastructural divides that continue to plague our society, these directly benefit criminals. Criminals profit when there is a divide in strategy and policy in the government. Criminals profit and benefit when officials fail to publicly acknowledge, affirm, and endorse the heroic efforts of our security personnel when they face off with heavily armed criminals. And here I want to acknowledge the bravery and perseverance of our security forces.
And there are important lessons that we should take into account as we seek to consolidate this particular consensus. First of all, is the recognition that the levels of criminal violence, and in particular murders, represent a fundamental threat to the survival of our country. And that we ought to be very realistic about what has happened and face the fact that for the 58 years of our independence, there has been a steady upward movement in the graph where violent murders and criminal violence is concerned.
Consequently, the law-abiding among us must continue to work together to ensure that we have the forces to win the civil war against those in our nation who decide that they will not be law-abiding. Today, we have a wonderful example of the nation coming together to erase forces so that we can win against this epidemic, we can win this civil war. And I just want to conclude by thanking everyone for getting us to this point and wishing for Jamaica continued movements in this process.
The forum had three main objectives.
If we as a country can find the basis for agreement on the critical priorities and remove from the political space the competitive, convenient political practices, then we can make significant progress. So we need to figure out what are the policies that work, the initiatives that work, and maybe the leadership styles and strategies that work, and ensure that there are continuities across governments, across administration. And the only way to get to that is to have this kind of consensus.
It is hoped that achieving this consensus, the country will reap the benefits of seeing a reduced crime rate in our society. The summit comes a little over a year after a crime and prevention summit was held at the Jamaica Conference Center on July 30, 2019. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has praised the security forces for recent operations which saw the elimination of some of the island's most wanted criminals. He was speaking at a crime summit at the Jamaica Conference Center on Monday.
In the community of Catadupa and that area, which was literally in the clutches of a criminal gang, in 2018, I received a call from a member of parliament, and he was literally on the verge of crime, that the community was captured by a criminal gang, to the point where public transportation passing through the community had to pay a toll. The police station there was shut up. Policemen were literally under pressure, afraid in that community in 2018. One of the criminals that was a part of that was being hunted down from that time. He was only a few days ago caught and dealt with within the law. On Sunday, we saw where the police force, again, acting on intelligence, following the proper procedures, have confronted these very dangerous criminals. And when they do this, and they act within the law, and they take on these criminals, we must commend them. And we must ensure that the criminals understand that the government, meaning the administration and the opposition is at one in dealing with these dangerous criminals, but we are at one in dealing with them within the law. And I believe that you are seeing unfolding in front of you as citizens of the country, your security forces beginning to display what you have always wanted them to display: a respect for law, themselves being officers of the law, acting on intelligence, acting strategically, and even if you don't get success right away, you act with perseverance and patience. Eventually, you will start to yield the results. And so I want to commend the security forces today. Continue to act within the law, continue to act strategically, continue to act on intelligence, and continue to be persistent and to persevere against the criminals who have held our communities in the clutches of fear for far too long. I'm certain that the community in Clarendon and in St. James on the border of Hanover, that those communities today feel free and liberated, justly so in our independence period.
On July 22, security forces killed Delano Wilmot, also known as Preke Boy, in Cambridge, St. James. Wilmot had topped Jamaica's most wanted list since 2018. Also, two of Clarendon's most wanted men, 25-year-old Leon Rose, otherwise called Hitler, and 24-year-old Zamar Nelson, otherwise called Terminator Boy, were among 6 persons killed during a police military operation in Buzzrock, Effortville, Clarendon on the weekend. The National Security Ministry's Anti-Violence Live Good campaign has gotten a $37 million boost. That comes in the form of a donation from David Osborne, country representative for the UK Department for International Development at the British High Commission. Last Friday, Minister without portfolio Senator Matthew Samuda visited DuPont Primary School during the closing of the ministry's Music, Sports and Technology summer program. The program catered to over 350 students from vulnerable communities, and they benefited from classes in basic animation, art and craft, music, basketball, coupled with sessions that enhanced numeracy, literacy and conflict resolution skills. The schools included DuPont, Coburn Gardens, Greenwich, St. Peter Claver, Tavares Garden and Whitfield Town primary schools. Students on the government's program of advancement through health and education PATH are set to receive laptops and tablets for the upcoming academic year. Minister of Education, Youth and Information Carl Samuda says the administration is in the process of procuring 100,000 laptops and tablets for the country's most vulnerable students from grades 10 to 13. The minister notes that the devices will be distributed on a phased basis beginning in late August. Director for the Center of Reparation Research at the University of the West Indies, Professor Vereen Shepherd, wants a continued public discussion about removing monuments in our landscape that she describes are a dishonor to our ancestors. As Jamaica marks 182 years since emancipation on August 1, social historian and director of the Center for Reparation Research at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Professor Vereen Shepherd, is calling for long-term planning and vision for Jamaica's post-independence development. Speaking at a JIS think tank session, Professor Vereen Shepherd explained that the popularity of the Black Lives Matter movement has brought forward the long-standing debate surrounding some of Jamaica's monuments and icons.
It's not too late, but I hope that the conversation will intensify, because we're talking about emancipation, but we're talking about emancipation within the context of our icons, our revolutionaries who fought to win emancipation, when some of the people on our landscape were saying no, delay it or never, and we are comfortable with that. That is not something that is comfortable for me.
The professor also gave her opinion on what should happen to these monuments.
I don't think you should throw them into the sea or into the canals or destroy them, because as a historian, I believe in preserving information and documentation, but I don't have to walk past them every day. I don't have to look at them every single day, because this is what our people of African descent are saying in the UK, in South Africa, right across the former colonized world, and in the colonized world still. Because we forget that while we're going to celebrate emancipation for the British colonized Caribbean, they are current colonies of Britain in our space. And so the argument becomes even more important for them. You have to pass every day and look at people who they are telling us are icons and should be celebrated. And that is, I think it's part of our disconnect with our history. And it seems to me as if we are telling children that it's okay, that Columbus must stand, we are flying in the face of our project of emancipation and our attempt to ensure that we don't participate in our own oppression.
She also pointed to schools which were built with funds of former slave owners or family trusts that benefited from them.
Our children deserve the fact that they left money for education, because our ancestors worked very hard for that money that they got out of the plantations, you know? So whether we're talking about Knockpatrick or Rosamond Penn, where they made their money. But I'm saying it's time. It's time to say, yes, they left money, as they should. But we don't have to have a national day, let's say a Founders Day at JC, where you celebrate James Drax or Charles Drax or any of their family. And you don't have to have a national, why we have a national day at Woolmer's to celebrate John Woolmer? And the narrative, when you speak to children, they tell you, oh, he was a goldsmith. Yeah, but he also had enslaved people. And there was a headmaster who was an enslaver. So what I'm appealing for as a Jamaican, as a historian, is to say, teach the children the truth. Balance the knowledge that they have been getting about the people who are their founders.
The professor also called for monuments to be built of persons who worked on plantations and those who physically built these educational institutions.
The University of the West Indies is on a former plantation, as we all know. In fact, I think there are 2 plantations bordering, Papine and Mona. But the University of the West Indies, during the bicentennial of the abolition of the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved Africans, when the act was passed anyway, they never really abolished slavery at the time, said, we will do research into who the last set of enslaved Africans were on this plantation. We will build monuments to them. And so there are monuments on the Mona campus with the names. And this is the balance that we need. We must stop allowing our children to grow up as disconnected people without roots.
In a follow-up story, Chairman of the Kensington Primary School Board, Bishop Alvin Bailey, says the 7-year-old child whose dreadlocked hairstyle was initially deemed against school policy, which triggered a constitutional legal battle, is expected to resume classes in September. The school's chairman says the child, who was 5 at the time of the initial standoff, still has a place in school. This despite a court ruling that her rights were not breached when the school sought to block the child from classes. But that narrative contrasts with the storyline of the parents, Dale and Shireen Virgo. The Supreme Court had granted an injunction for the child to attend school after Jamaicans for Justice filed a motion on behalf of the child and her parents in August 2018. Let's find out now about the latest market movements. We join Gabriel Thompson for the Business Report.
In Monday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index advanced by 5,475 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 82 stocks, of which 39 advanced, 30 declined, and 13 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 13 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 1834 Investments, Access Financial Services Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica, AMG Packaging and Paper Company, and Barita Investments. Trading firm were Caribbean Assurance Brokers, Elite Diagnostic Limited, and Grace Kennedy Limited. Derrimon Trading Company Limited was the volume leader with 8.4 million units, followed by Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 2.5 million units and Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with 1.3 million units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Monday, August 3 ended trading at $148.47. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $111.67. The pound sterling traded for $196.21, and the euro ended trading at $177.18. Oil prices eased on Tuesday amid concerns that a fresh wave of COVID-19 infections will see a global demand recovery stalling due to tighter lockdowns just as major producers ramp up output. Brent crude futures fell 68 cents to $40.33 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell 72 cents to $43.43 a barrel. That's it for the business report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
In regional news, the Tourism Ministry in Barbados has updated its travel protocols. We get more in this report from Barbados today.
The Ministry of Tourism has added a new category of countries for travelers in its protocols called the Bubble. They include St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As of Wednesday, August 5th, persons from these countries who have not traveled to or transited through any country designated as high, medium, or low risk within 21 days prior to coming to Barbados will not be required to take a COVID-19 PCR test. However, in its updated protocols, the ministry said persons from within the bubble must wear masks while at the Grancy Adams International Airport, and all travelers must undergo a health screen. Those persons who are deemed to have been in close contact with a positive COVID case will be quarantined at approved facilities.
Former President David Granger says he has accepted the declaration from the Guyana elections that saw Mr. Ali installed as the new head of state. Granger, however, says he will be challenging the declaration. Anara Khan of InfoHub reports.
Quote, I have stated repeatedly from the start of the electoral process that the Partnership for National Unity Alliance for Change coalition would respect the lawful declaration of the Elections Commission. I have never altered this position, and I do now acknowledge the declaration. End of quote. The former head of state also noted that while the coalition respects the declaration, it will be challenged. According to the former president, the report ordered by the court and presented to the commission contains significant anomalies and irregularities. The APNU-AFC coalition, he said, will continue its campaign to ensure that the votes of all Guyanese are accurately recorded, tallied, and reported. He also expressed appreciation to all Guyanese who have participated in the 2020 general and regional elections. Meantime, the Caribbean community has welcomed the conclusion of Guyana's electoral process with the declaration of the final results. CARICOM, in a statement on Sunday, commended the people of Guyana for their patience and maturity during the protracted process and pledged that it will continue to support the country in its development efforts under its new government. For InfoHub, Anara Khan.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis Monday night announced the complete national lockdown of every island in the Bahamas for at least the next 2 weeks after the country recorded a significant spike in the number of cases of the novel coronavirus COVID-19. In a nationwide radio and television broadcast, Minnis said that acting on the advice of the health experts, quote, "I'm announcing today a national lockdown for the entire country commencing Tuesday, August 4 at 10 p.m. local time," end quote. He says the national lockdown will be for a minimum of 2 weeks. Near the end of this period, they'll assess the health data and advise whether further lockdown period is necessary. In this report from HTS News Force, we look at Emancipation Day celebrations in St. Lucia.
President of the Ayanola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari and a member of the St. Lucia chapter of the Black Lives Matter movement, Aaron Alexander, wants greater prominence for the observance of Emancipation Day. Black Lives Matter, with the assistance of a number of groups and agencies, hosted a rally at Constitution Park on August 1st under the theme, "Our Story Continues." Saturday's celebration was a far cry from the tense-filled environment back in June when the organization staged an unauthorized protest rally which unnerved law enforcement. The activists also lamented the level of state coordination for national observance, which was mainly driven by non-governmental organizations and protest groups.
This, what we did here today, pretty much in our eyes and our view, this was the Emancipation National Celebration. So CDF, we want them to really get on board stronger the next time around, but we want to continue this for it to grow from strength to strength. We are encouraging the government to put some greater funding into emancipation. I mean, we are not knocking Carnival, but for the government to be putting 3 million into Carnival and 20,000 into emancipation, we think that is a gross injustice and something needs to be done, and that situation needs to be addressed, and the allocation for emancipation needs to be increased. So we want to continue this.
Despite his criticisms, Alexander was grateful for the support of the organizations involved in putting on the celebration of Afrocentricity.
All the entities who collaborated, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Ayanola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari, and CAFRA, all of us, and along with the CDF also, we had discussions with the CDF, and the CDF has assured us of some sort of financial assistance, so we're looking forward to that in the week coming there because we have bills to pay. So we thank everyone for making this activity a success. And from all indications, you know, Emancipation Day 2020 is a resounding success.
The celebration was interspersed with music performances, cultural presentations, and poetry recitals. Independent Senator Adrian Auger, the impresario behind the landmark events, which also lent support to the commemoration, paid tribute to the late George Floyd. The death of the African American at the hands of police in the U.S. sparked the protest movement against racial injustice against black people, which has gone global.
Nose to crusted tile, threads worn down, but not on fire yet. And then the light fades. Before his noon, before George Floyd's zenith, his air goes out. The church candles stutter. Yes, choirs will soar for him. Oh, mama, in my last minute, I am you again, and I have missed you so.
Black Lives Matter and ICAR say the activities marking the celebration will continue throughout the month.
We want to continue this, and we want to tell the nation emancipation activities continue for the rest of the month of August, and we're looking forward to probably having an African fashion show sometime later in the month. And of course, on the 17th of August, we are celebrating Marcus Garvey's birthday. And as we know, Marcus Garvey is an icon, a true African descendants liberator.
Senator Fortuna Belrose, the minister responsible for culture, represented the office of the Prime Minister at the activity. Rosalie Hopeful, Kenson Casimir, stood in for the leader of the opposition. Organizers of the Emancipation Day celebration say they are looking forward to deeper cooperation with state agencies in hosting future observances. Joachim Duplessis, HTS News Force.
In sports, it's all about cricket. Australia's October 2020 series against West Indies has been cancelled due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the international sporting calendar. It follows the postponement of the T20 World Cup scheduled for October-November in Australia and this month's one-day international series against Zimbabwe. Cricket Australia says the three-match West Indies series had been intended as a warm-up to the T20 World Cup, but could no longer serve that purpose. Australia is currently struggling with a second wave of the novel coronavirus infections, and its international borders remain closed, with arrivals required to undergo 14-day quarantine. And that's the news on PBCJ. Thank you so much for watching.